Hello and welcome to the One Shot Show where GMs go to level up. I'm Patty. I'm joined as always here with Matt, and we're in my favorite returning format, which is we're back in the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah.
What did we talk about last time? We talked about the muscle.
We talked about the muscle and the mastermind.
Yeah, so we're talking about the archetypes, the classes, if you like, that you could sort your villains into, or where you could go to find inspiration to go like, I've had this villain, what else is out there in the palette for me to play with in my adventure? Because as we spoke about a lot in the last episode, the villain is the closest thing that the GM has to their central character or characters. It's their party. It's their development over the course of the campaign.
And we've sort of, when we've touched on this, we've tended to talk about the archetype, how to run it, and how to beat it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you let this get defeated? Because that's the point of villains, is to be beaten. But the how really matters.
Yeah.
What have we got for this one?
Okay, we got two. Mine that I have nominated for this one is the Misguided Hero.
Mm-hmm. I've got an M1 as well. We've only done 4 M1s so far. I've got the Mindless Force.
I'm so excited for these.
Talk to us about Misguided Heroes as villains.
I mean, my first question to you.
Okay, go.
And it's a gamble. When you think about cinema, who's the most icon of villains of cinema to you? Who's in the pot?
Like total?
I think so.
Oh, geez. Darth Vader's a classic.
Darth Vader's who I was fishing for. Yep. Who else is in the pot for you?
In more recent, Thanos, who is definitely going to fit your archetypes.
Yeah, absolutely.
He certainly believes he's the hero.
Yeah.
For me, there's a few other ones, like, what's his name? Javier Bardem's character in There Will Be Blood.
Oh, I think, are you going to talk about him for your thing? I think he's close
I'm not,
to that.
But he's so close. He's so close.
Cool. So I'm fishing. I was fishing for Vader because I was I think that what I was considering why I was so drawn to the Misguided Hero, it was one of the ones that I wrote down in the list and I renamed it a few times. I toyed around with it. But then I thought of Vader, and I was like, I think Vader is such an interesting example of what you can do with a villain when you consider that, like, once upon a time, they were a hero, and the power that gives you as a GM, and the gift that can give to your players. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Anakin Skywalker, iconic version of this thing. I think also about characters like in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man 2099. Yep. I think about a lot of characters in Game of Thrones who really toy this line of they move between these things. Like Arya Stark's a great example of a character who constantly is moving back and forth on this sliding scale. And I love it because as a GM, you have dozens of NPCs. Some of them are important, some of them are powerful, and it's very possible, depending on what sort of campaign that you're running, for that NPC to become the antagonist, to become the villain of your piece in a way that can feel really, I'm going to say it, in a way that feels diegetic, in a way that feels like it has verisimilitude, in the way that the world...
Everyone take a shot! Verisimilitude!
Verisimilitude enters the room. I love this concept. I also am biased because I feel like my 3 favorite villains I've ever run fall into this camp.
The Misguided Hero.
Yeah.
So before you go into the specifics of the example, I also wanted, in your opinion then, what about it is hero? And to you, if you're designing one of these, what's the hero part and what's the misguided part?
I often feel hero is the intent. The intent is in some way pure to a moral code that exists in your fantasy world. They are striving in the same way as often your party is striving for something. And then the misguided part often comes... Well, I mean, it's always debatable. You assume that your party is often on the right side of, as a GM, your party is often on the right side of the argument, or they're at least trying to navigate their way toward it. Whereas the misguided hero is often something that is contrapunctal to that. You can figure out maybe who your misguided hero is going to be depending on the direction that your party is going, and go well, here's one argument, but here is another valid argument that exists in the fantasy world, and this is the character that embodies that argument.
And I think that's kind of what the heart of the misguided hero, to my mind, is they carry often a philosophy and are therefore great at fighting against a philosophy, right? If you have a villain who is, say, a tyrannical dictator or aspires to be one, they are a conquering warlord. However, every region they conquer is fantastically stable and prosperous compared to prior.
Yeah, this is the Thanos argument.
Exactly. Does that make the wars justified? So we first of all, we get to explore this philosophy a little bit while we're working against this tyrannical force. The hard part of these, the sort of villain that has a point is you got to make sure that the point isn't too good.
Yeah.
You don't want
I think that's also where Misguided comes in. It's kind of like...
It does need to lead them a little bit past the point of no return.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be all the way down. I dislike these sorts of villains when suddenly in the last, third of the story, they just go completely off the fucking rails. They go, complete batshit. That's not interesting.
That's Daenerys. That's the Game of Thrones poor argument.
I like it when they go just past the line. And even if it looks like they may come back from that point, it's actually, that's more interesting, that point of no return.
Yeah. It's what line do they cross, and can the party ever bring them back, or does it have to be a bridge that is burned forever?
Which is where, how do we defeat the Misguided Hero? Because you've kind of touched on the idea of redemption.
I mean, redemption is one that is fascinating. They're a villain that is as much fun to talk to as they are to be in an encounter with. Like the Juggernaut that we talked about, the idea of the muscle, that's a villain that you want to be an initiative with. The Misguided Hero, you could have a couple of encounters with, but the final one is does it come to blows, or can words bring them round?
And that's the thing, that final encounter, how you defeat them, is in turn a philosophical.
Yeah.
It is a philosophical battle,
yeah,
as much as it might be a physical fight in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much fun to for players. My players love trying to talk around to find the way through. One of my Misguided Heroes is a character who takes such umbrage with the Warlock patron of one of the PCs and go I can't trust anything that this party does because of who you work for, and as a result I am on another line away from you. And it's been so much fun for the players to juggle that thing, because this is an NPC that they have respect for, that they that previously in the adventure was very much an ally, and it's so much fun tugging them back and forth. Yeah. I also think that the way to defeat these people is because a great use of a Misguided Hero is as a foil or as a mirror to a player character, and for that player character to really confront what's going on with themselves and then apply that same logic to the villain. It's such fun.
I often think in my campaigns, the sort of antagonist options tend to be a full rogues gallery of Misguided Heroes. There are a bunch of people with different opinions about how things are going to go or should go, and my party picks a side.
Yeah.
That's often how I do things as we wind up towards the later stretches of a game.
A great twist villain, I will say, in the final part of my segment is that you can have an NPC who seems that they're fully on board, and then suddenly maybe something changes in the world, or an artifact is recovered and presented to that person, and then all of a sudden the players don't understand what's going on, but that person is now on the other side of them.
I want to shout out a really quick piece of media. This is maybe my most niche shout out. Truly, I'd love if our fans of the show went and watched the few animated shorts in the Tales of Elethrion universe.
Cool.
There's a great Misguided Hero character in one of them.
What is Tales of Elethrion? Is it a book series?
No, it's an animated short.
Cool.
And it's just really stylish and fun and exciting. And to me, it always feels the way that D&D feels to me.
Yeah, so
while otherwise emulating very little of the details of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that shout out done, this is the last M in our rogues gallery as well, is the Mindless Force.
So cool. I feel like in some ways, I'll be so interested to see where you go with it, because I think of it as the antithesis to Misguided Hero.
In a way, right? But I was also going to say there's actually a point in the philosophy of it all. When you're looking at the philosophical layer of the Misguided Hero, I think the Mindless Force is also really good for that. What is the Mindless Force? Well, the Mindless Force is the unstoppable, inexorable, inevitable threat. And it often doesn't take the human form, which is where you say it's the antithesis. I believe that the Mindless Force broadly falls into two categories. And it's kind of funny because one of those categories, despite the fact that we've called this the Mindless Force, one of those categories I refer to as the alien intelligence.
This is exactly where I went with it as well.
Which is to say, it's not like just aliens. It's a way of thinking that is so unlike our own, that it is functionally incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Right? The other version that I'll talk about a little bit less is the force of nature.
Exactly what I've got written down here.
Great, yeah. So the Mindless Force in terms of the alien intelligence, this is often when we're looking at eldritch horrors.
Yeah.
You know? What does Cthulhu want? Fuck knows.
Yeah, what does the presence in Annihilation want? What the heck's going on?
And Annihilation was going to be the Southern Reach trilogy and the movie Annihilation.
So cool.
And actually, Annihilation, this is why I wanted to bring it up, is it is perfectly in the middle of the two, right? Because the whole time during Annihilation, they're going, why is it doing this? Why is it doing this? What does it want? Why is it doing this? And it is this anomaly. It is spreading. It is corrupting life and nature around it.
Area X, is that what they call it?
But also in another way, it seems kind of benign.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like it's any more harmful than, like, traversing through the wilderness.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they get attacked at one point by wildlife, but, like, that can just happen if you're on the Appalachian Trail anyway.
Absolutely.
Like, that just happened. That's just nature, right? And that's actually what it settles on, is we have this encounter with the central thing of this. And the conclusion that it comes away with was, what did it want? Well, it didn't want anything. It was just doing what it does, right? It is effectively actually a force of nature.
Yeah.
It simply is. The Mindless Force is also where you might have things like Mind Flayers. What do they want? What are their schemes? Who knows? But they are massively intelligent. They might be coming from an other place. They might be coming from a higher incomprehensible dimension, or, you know, in our medieval setting, they come out of space often, in you know, a realm that is fundamentally beyond us.
Yeah.
That is what this is. I also think this is often what gods can fall into. I like a god that cannot be comprehended. I think gods should be fundamentally othered to mortals, like on that very fundamental layer of the way they think. The perspective they have on things. They might not even really be aware of us.
Yeah.
We just think they are, because we try to rationalize everything down to our human scale. But when you actually get up to that scale, we're not even there.
What is the presence, because I'm just conscious of time, what is the presence that this sort of force can have in a game? Like, what is it? What does it feel like on the table? What does it feel like mechanically to you?
To me, my favorite version of this, it should feel like an apocalyptic threat. Something is happening, and we don't really understand why. We don't truly know the source of where it's coming from, and yet it must be addressed.
Yeah.
Now, that might not be where you start the campaign from. It might be that you start from, you know, save the village from a goblin raid.
Yeah, but yes, the idea of it, like, it's a growing backdrop, maybe, or like the seeds that are sown until...
And they slowly unearth more and more pieces of this. Another example is, you know, the zombie horde is a classic one. Game of Thrones is effectively doing this.
Yeah,
where
the Night King's presence
for
is
all the
unknowable.
politicking and everything else going on, that's the real end game boss, if you will, is the Night King and the hordes of the undead. And at some point, they're going to figure out what they're going to do against this fundamentally unstoppable force.
I'm going to say, so like the great power that I feel like a Mindless Force has in your gameplay is that it creates wonderful interfaction conflict. It's like, what do we do about it? How do we deal with it? Because the idea of like the human philosophies that emerge when confronted by a force that big are varied, and it allows the players to choose where they're going to sit on that spectrum.
It's also really good for a man versus nature.
Yes.
In the very classic narrative structure, a man versus nature story. Even if that force of nature could just be a spreading blight, or, you know, the crops will eventually all die.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, God, have you seen Wonder Woman?
Which
you know how
one?
much the first one,
No.
the first Gal Gadot one, I should say.
Yes,
you know how
yes.
much it fucking sucked when it turned out it was just a guy?
Yeah.
And then she just punches a guy, and
Danny
then the guy's
Houston?
dead. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry.
I
Feel bad for
stopped
that guy.
caring, you know, by the end of that movie, because it was so cool. And I was really waiting for the reveal to be, no, humans just go to war. There is no compulsion being put upon us.
Yeah.
For all your heroism, what you're actually fighting against is the dark hearts of men.
It's a weird
That would have been
weakness.
so much better
It's
than
a weird
Ares.
weakness, and it's also kind of like, it's kind of diminishing to the world
Yeah,
wars in a way that
right?
feels like it's like, hey, yeah. I agreed. I thought the same thing was going to happen.
And actually, that's the
No, it's David
difficulty.
Hewlett who is
Yes.
the villain in the end.
No, now
Danny
that you say
Houston
that,
is a red herring.
different kind of guy. But now that you know the man versus nature story, the difficulty actually. Let's say there's a blight spreading. You can't fight a blight in D&D, unfortunately, which often means when we put these in as a villain, we end up having the reveal that there was a cabal of liches behind it all along, which is no longer a mindless force. It's a guy with motivations, and I think that's a lot less interesting. Which means actually, I think that the way to use the mindless force, if you're going the man versus nature route, is you got to be it's actually got to be a campaign you lose. Or it's not a villain that you can even fight. And it's something that's happening slowly. It's something that's going to take place across the next 500 years. Now, your human character doesn't care. Your elf character does. They're going to live that long.
Yeah.
But that's just the backdrop. That's the emotional backdrop against which we are fighting a misguided hero who has an opinion about how to deal with it.
And like the zombie horde or the Mind Flayer is a good example. You may defeat one Mind Flayer, you may defeat a Nautiloid full of Mind Flayers, but the feeling that they have is that they will keep going forever. And like that, and that's part of it.
And also when they enter your setting, they're such a disrupting threat.
Yeah.
They're
A great way
terrifying.
to, a great like if you played a great campaign and then you want to drastically change your world and like introduce something that still feels like it's of the world, but transforms it, Mindless Force is a great thing as well. I'm just going to throw in there, this is probably something for later on, is like, one of the things I was toying around with in this argument for me is the Terminator or the Omnidroid from The Incredibles, is that a Mindless Force or is that something slightly different?
That's something slightly different because that, despite being quote-unquote mindless, it represents a different kind of thing.
The directive?
And I don't have it's a tool, and I don't have a word for it. And this is why I didn't include Javier Bardem's character from There Will Be Blood. Again, it's annoying that I can't remember the name. It's the reason I didn't include it is because
Anton Sugar.
Anton Sugar, yeah. As much as he feels like a force of nature, he is not the Mindless Force. He has actions and motivations. They may be inscrutable to us, but the thing that is scary is that you can understand on some deep, dark level where that behavior comes from.
I wonder if some of the others that we've got in the pot here are like the Mad Dog, and I wonder if he's there.
I almost think it's the Singular Hunter.
Ooh, should we do Mad Dog Singular Hunter? Or
Yeah,
I've got the Hunter in there. I call him the Assassin.
Yes, because one is targeted. That's what the Terminator is.
Yeah.
One is wanton.
Yeah,
and Anton Chigurh is wanton. He's not targeting anyone in particular. He is inflicting his will upon the world, whereas the Terminator has a single target. And yes, the Mad Dog versus the Hunter.
We're getting this into the next step.
We're out of time.
We've had an incredible time.
Next episode.
Mindless Force, Misguided Hero, great counterpoints. Both give something completely different to your story, and both are a completely different palette to paint with as a GM. Hope you use them. Let us know how you have. If you hop onto our Discord, let us know.
Please do.
This has been The One Shot Show. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
If you're enjoying listening to The One Shot Show, why not support us on Patreon? Go to patreon.com/OneShotShow, where you'll be able to find video versions of our episodes, long-form bonus episodes that we release every single month, access to our community Discord server. You can pose questions for our special Q&A episodes, and if you're back at the higher tiers, you can even vote on what questions we cover in our show. Check it out.